They didn't come as an army. They didn't send warnings. And when they arrived, it was already too late. There were no signals, no preparations, no time to react. Just the sudden appearance of ships on the horizon, cutting through the water like something unknown, something dangerous. And before anyone could understand what was happening, the attack had already begun. 793 AD, England, Lindisfarne, a quiet island, far from any battlefield. A place where monks lived in peace, untouched by war, focused on prayer and routine. There were no walls, no defenses, no reason to fear an attack. It was the last place anyone expected violence. And that's exactly why it was chosen. The ships appeared without warning. Long, narrow, built for speed. They moved differently, faster than anything the people of England had seen before. By the time the alarm spread, it didn't matter. The Vikings had already landed. Armed with axes and shields, they moved quickly, without hesitation, without mercy. This wasn't a battle. It was a shock. The monastery didn't stand a chance. Sacred buildings were torn apart. Fire spread through wooden structures, turning a place of peace into chaos within moments. The men inside weren't soldiers. They had no training, no weapons, no strategy. Some tried to run. Some tried to hide. Some simply froze. But none of it changed the outcome. This wasn't just destruction, it was a message. Something had arrived in England that didn't follow rules. Something that didn't respect borders, beliefs, or traditions. And the worst part wasn't the attack itself, it was what came after. Because they didn't stop. More ships came. More raids followed. What started as a single shock quickly turned into a pattern. Coastal villages began to disappear. Not slowly, but suddenly. One day they existed. The next, they were gone. Gold was taken. Food was taken. People were taken. And every time the Vikings left, they returned again. Stronger, more prepared, more confident. England tried to respond. Kings gathered men, built defenses, prepared for battle. But they were fighting something they didn't understand. The Vikings didn't move like traditional armies. They didn't wait for open battles. They didn't follow predictable paths. They chose when to strike and where. And by the time a response came, they were already gone. At first, it seemed like simple raiding, quick attacks, quick escapes. But slowly, that began to change. The Vikings started staying longer. Camps appeared near rivers and coasts. Temporary shelters turned into controlled zones. Raids turned into occupations. And what was once fear from a distance became a direct presence. Entire regions began slipping out of control. Not because England was weak, but because the attacks never stopped. There was no single enemy to defeat. No final battle to win. Just constant pressure. Every time defenses improved, the Vikings adapted. Every time resistance grew, they returned with more force. The land itself started to change. Areas once ruled by English kings now followed Viking control. New systems, new rules, new power. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about control. And slowly, England was being reshaped from the inside. And still, the ships kept coming. This wasn't just it was transformation. A shift that no one had planned for, and no one could stop quickly. Because the Vikings weren't just testing England anymore, they were preparing to take it. And what came next wouldn't be raids. It would be something far bigger, something far more dangerous. Because soon, the Vikings wouldn't just arrive and leave. They would come to stay. And when that happened, England would never be the same again. They didn't come to raid anymore. They came to take control. What had started as sudden attacks and quick disappearances had now turned into something far more dangerous. The Vikings were no longer testing England. They were preparing to dominate it. And when they returned this time, they didn't come in small groups moving along the coasts. They came as a force, organized, deliberate, and ready to stay. They came as an army, not scattered raiders, but a coordinated invasion that England had never faced before. This force would later be remembered as the Great Heathen Army, and it didn't arrive for gold or quick victories. It arrived for land, for power, for control. And that changed everything. Because England was no longer dealing with raids, it was facing occupation. They didn't just land, they settled. Camps turned into fortified positions. Temporary shelters became strongholds. And from those strongholds, control began to spread. Kingdom by kingdom, region by region, the pressure built. Northumbria was one of the first to fall, weakened from within, divided by its own conflicts. The Vikings didn't just defeat it in battle. They broke it from the inside, using its weakness against itself. And it didn't stop there. East Anglia followed. Then Mercia. Each loss wasn't just a defeat, it was a shift in power. England wasn't losing one battle, it was slowly losing control of itself. Kings fought back, armies were raised, battles were fought with everything they had. But it wasn't enough. Because this wasn't a single enemy you could defeat and end the war. It was constant pressure. Every time one Viking force was pushed back, another appeared somewhere else, attacking from a different direction, forcing England to stretch thinner and thinner. This wasn't a war with clear lines. It was chaos. Controlled chaos. And for a long time, it worked. But then something changed. England found resistance, not in numbers, not in strength, but in leadership. A king who didn't just react, but adapted. Alfred the Great didn't try to fight the Vikings the way others had. He understood that this enemy couldn't be defeated with old methods. So he changed the rules. He built fortified towns, creating places that couldn't be easily taken. He organized his forces so they could respond faster, not just defend but react before damage was done. He studied the Vikings, how they moved, how they attacked, how they thought. And slowly, carefully, he started to push back. For the first time, the Vikings were slowed down. Not defeated, not destroyed, but slowed. And that mattered. Because it broke the idea that they were unstoppable. It showed that they could be resisted if the strategy was right. But the war didn't end. Because while England adapted, the Vikings evolved too. They weren't just warriors anymore. Some became rulers. Leaders who didn't just want to fight, but to govern. And from that, something new was formed. A region where Viking law, Viking control, and Viking influence shaped everyday life. The Danelaw. England was no longer one unified land. It was divided. One part under English rule, another under Viking control. Different systems, different laws, different identities. And that division created tension that never truly disappeared. It wasn't peace, it was a pause between conflicts. Years passed. Then, decades. Battles continued, but something deeper was happening beneath the surface. The first generation of Viking invaders began to fade. New leaders rose. Some Viking rulers blended into the land they once attacked. The line between invader and ruler started to blur, and slowly, the chaos of invasion turned into something more stable, but never fully settled. Because the story wasn't over. Not yet. In 1066, everything came back. Another Viking force, another claim, another invasion. But this time, things were different. England had changed. It had learned from every raid, every invasion, every loss. It wasn't the same vulnerable land that had been caught off guard in 793. Now, it was ready. At Stamford Bridge, the final chapter began. Viking forces marched forward with confidence, carrying the weight of their past victories. They had faced kings before. They had taken kingdoms before. They expected another victory. But what they found was resistance at a level they hadn't faced before. An organized English army, prepared, positioned, and ready for direct confrontation. No surprise attacks, no sudden raids. This was battle, pure and direct. Steel against steel, strength against strength. The fighting was brutal, close, relentless. There was no room for hesitation. Every step forward was earned. Every strike mattered. And for the first time in a long time, the Vikings were the ones unprepared. They fought hard, like they always had. They pushed forward, trying to break the line. But something was different this time. The English didn't collapse. They didn't panic. They held their ground. And slowly, the momentum shifted. The Vikings began to fall back. Not all at once, but piece by piece. Leaders were lost. Formations broke, and what had once been an unstoppable force started to crumble under pressure it couldn't escape. And then, it ended. The Viking force collapsed. Survivors retreated. And just like that, the long era of Viking dominance in England came to an end. Not slowly, not quietly, but with a final decisive blow. After everything, after years of invasion, control, resistance, and war, England stood, not untouched, not unchanged, but still standing. They didn't come to visit. They came to break it. And for a moment, it looked like they would succeed. Kingdoms fell. Lands were taken. England itself almost disappeared. But it didn't. It survived. It adapted. And in the end, it fought back. Not as the same nation it once was, but as something stronger. Because the Vikings didn't just test England, they forced it to become something new. And that is why history didn't remember them as raiders. It remembered them as the ones who almost took England, and the reason it changed forever. And it all began in 793.